was in the market for another aircraft, and Ralph had helped me find the type of aircraft I was looking for. It was Titan Tornado, and discovered one on Barnes, well, actually on the Titan forum that was for sale. It wasn't being actively publicized, but I got hold of the guy, and we talked about the plane, and it looked like a good fit for me. And so kind of on the spur of the moment, I flew out there and took a look at it because the price was good and the quality was good. I was afraid it wouldn't last very long, so moved quickly on it and made a deal with the guy, and then had to figure out how to get it home. Once I made the deal for the plane, I was looking for a way to get it back, and Ralph had some experience with this type of aircraft and volunteered to fly it back for me, which was wonderful. So we worked out a plan to make that happen and got him a flight in that direction, and got he and the owner talking together and working out the details, and it worked out really well.
Got up Friday morning, we went down and got started working on the airplane immediately. We started checking things over, putting gas on, checking through the systems. We had a little problem with the rudder pedals, that the adjustment was locked up, and we had to lubricate it and move some stuff around, and got that freed up. And the wind had switched out of the east, which meant that I was going to have a headwind heading out in the afternoon, provided everything went right. This was all up in the air. We didn't know for sure whether I was leaving or not. It just depended upon the test flight. So we got the thing ready to go, started the engine, and I taxied it around a little bit, practiced a few high-speed taxis, and got familiar with the feel of the controls of the aircraft. And about 30 minutes later, I was ready for my test flight. Test flight was uneventful. I had a little problem with the throttle, which Roger had mentioned there was a problem with the throttle. You give it too much throttle and exhaust temperatures start climbing dramatically, so you have to pull the throttle back, and all of a sudden you pick up RPM and the exhaust temperatures go down. So there was a problem with that, but it had been that way for 7 years, so all I had to do was deal with it, and it shouldn't be a big problem. Finally, we got the wing tanks on, and we got the pumps working for both wing tanks so we could transfer fuel. We filled all the tanks and started loading the aircraft. We had, Roger had some company coming that wanted to see the aircraft before I left, so we had to kind of wait on them. So it all kind of worked out at the same time. I was all loaded up and ready to go, and his company arrived. They got to see me as I taxied out and took off. The climb out was moderate. It wasn't a great climb out, but it was manageable. So I headed down the road to the southeast, headed towards Buckeye Airport, which was about 40 miles away, and proceeded towards Wilcox. I was hoping to make it to Wilcox before sundown, but I didn't know for sure how far I would make it, so I just had to wing it. The trip down the road to Buckeye was very interesting. The landscape, which I had seen from a car, was very different from the air. It was a lot of brown, a lot of rocks, not much green. My plan was pretty well defined, and the GPS I had everything right on it. It had my headings and locations of airports, and it was informative. It had everything that I needed to make it to my destination.
One of the things I wanted to do was to keep track of Ralph, because you never can tell where he might go, and I was thinking he might head for Las Vegas or something. So I had a tracking system that I'd used on my boat called Spot, It uses a satellite signal and GPS to keep track and puts that out on an internet page so people can see where you are at any given time, and also it will give alarms and things if you get into trouble so you can get help. So I sent that with Ralph for him to put in the plane, and he did, and so we were able to track his movements all the way from where he started in Indian Hills all the way back to Houston.
The flight route was planned around the idea of following Interstate 10 as much as possible, so if I had to make a off-field emergency landing, I would be close to civilization. This leg, however, did little of that. My fuel capacity was 25 gallons, and Roger suggested that my fuel burn would be 3.5 gallons an hour. I didn't plan to fly as slow as he had, and I expected to burn as much as 4.5 gallons an hour. The fuel gauge didn't work, so I had to create a plan for transferring fuel from the wing tanks to the main tank. A problem could occur if I transferred too much gas too soon to overfill the main tank. I'm just flying along, and all of a sudden a huge hole appears in the ground. This is near Casa Grande. And later, while monitoring Casa Grande's airport radio frequency, I hear a pilot report his position over a copper mine. So I guess this big hole is a copper mine. Tucson is wedged between mountains with Class C airspace restricting easy passage. Plus, I created a route knocking 10 miles off my flight to Wilcox. As I proceed along my shortcut plan to Wilcox, I discover my plan had a 6,000-foot mountain in its way. I had misread the chart. I had to go around Tucson after all and added another 10 to 20 miles to my leg. South of Tucson, I spot Interstate 10 and turn back on course. Come on, Jabiru engine, keep running. There's nowhere to land out here. I learned one more thing about following Interstate 10. If the interstate isn't straight, it's because there's a big mountain in the way. I am pressed to get to Wilcox or Lordsburg on this leg because I need to meet Chuck and Alan in Fort Stockton on Saturday afternoon. They want to fly back home with me on Sunday. My flight from Indian Hills to Wilcox is 3 hours, 26 minutes, and 254 miles. When I landed in Wilcox, Arizona, the airport manager came out and refueled my plane, and I asked him, what's the best way to get into town? And he said, well, I'll give you right into town, but I have to wait till 5 o'clock to close up. So took me a few minutes to get all my stuff together, and it was 5 o'clock before I knew it. And he gave me a ride into town, and he well, I asked him, I said, well, what's the best way to get back out the airport? He says, well, I'll pick you up in the morning. So he gave me a ride back and forth to the hotel, and it worked out just great. It's a cool morning. I had frost on my plane this morning, and I have 460 miles to Fort Stockton. This 100 octane aviation fuel sure shows up a lot better in the wing tanks than the car gas I've been using. I am avoiding a lot of climbing over this high terrain because the exhaust temperature overheat when I add power. I'll try to stay 1,000 to 2,000 feet above the terrain only. There's a big runway. There's about the only safe place I've seen to land all along this whole trip so far. This leg to my turn south in Las Cruces is 180 miles. Then at Las Cruces I turn southeast for 80 miles, passing El Paso to Fabin. From Fabin, 86 miles to Van Horn. And from Van Horn, another 111 miles to Fort Stockton. That's my plan for today. as I approach Van Horn, I see a huge traffic jam on Interstate 10. This is the source of the smoke I saw 30 miles back. It's a truck crash. It's hard to tell what exactly happened here. Van Horn, Texas. My flight time today to Van Horn is 3 hours and 37 minutes.